I spent 7 years paying off his debt and building his dream cafe. One night, I walked in early and heard him telling another woman she was just a stepping stone. My hands shook. I didn't confront him. Instead, I transferred the business to my name and froze every account. The next morning, he found the locks changed and a sign that read closed due to lies. He called me screaming, but I calmly replied, "Now try starting over without me, because I never planned to build someone else's dream." But I did. For 7 years. My name's Rachel. I'm 35 now, but this all started when I was 28 and stupid in love. I'd just finalized my divorce from a guy who cheated on me with his dental hygienist. I was tired, broke, and not interested in anyone. That's when I met Brian. He was working the bar at a small pub in Tacoma, Washington. He had this way of talking that made you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. He wasn't conventionally attractive, but he had charisma, and I was lonely. He made me laugh. That was enough. On our second date, he told me about his dream. He said, "I want to open a coffee shop. A place that actually feels like home, not just some corporate thing." I've had the idea for years. I thought it was sweet. He had a sketchbook with logos and menu ideas. He even had names picked out. What he didn't have was money, or credit, or a plan. "I've just had bad luck," he told me. "I got stuck helping my brother, then my last girlfriend tanked my credit. I should have seen the red flags, but I didn't. I saw someone who needed a second chance. I gave him one. It started small. I helped him fix his resume so he could apply for a small business loan. He got denied. His credit was worse than he said. Then came the late notices on old student loans and maxed out cards. I started covering some of his bills, thinking it was temporary. Then we moved in together. I co-signed the lease. Then I took out a personal loan, $22,000, to start the cafe. We called it Blue Pine Coffee, after the trees near where his dad used to take him camping. He told me that story like it meant everything. I put the loan in my name. I thought we were partners. He told me it was just until things stabilized. I didn't just pay. I worked nights, weekends, double shifts. I kept my job at the library but picked up side work doing catering on weekends. I laid tile in that cafe with my own hands. I painted walls. I put together IKEA shelves until my knuckles bled. Brian was the charm, the brand. He talked to customers, made playlists, handed out samples at events. Everyone loved him. I was the one doing payroll, placing supply orders, fighting with the POS system when it crashed. Most people didn't even know my name. He liked it that way. By year 5, the cafe was finally breaking even. I wanted to start taking a small salary. He said, "We're almost there, just hold on a little longer." So I held on. We were together for 7 years. 7 years of giving everything I had to a man who never planned to give anything back. The night everything changed was a Thursday. I'd been at the library late doing inventory. Brian was closing the cafe that night, but we had a standing dinner date afterward. I texted him to see if he wanted anything from the taco truck. He didn't answer. So I stopped by the cafe around 8:30 to drop off his food. The front lights were off, but the back office light was on. I figured he was just wrapping up. I walked in quietly, so I wouldn't startle him. I didn't expect to hear voices. A woman was laughing. Her voice was high-pitched, flirty. Then Brian's voice, clear as day. She was just a stepping stone. She got me through the early years, but she's not who I see in my future. She doesn't get it. She's more of a background type. The woman giggled. "You think she suspects anything?" "Nah," Brian said. "She's still all in. I'm thinking of buying her out. She's tired anyway. She'll probably be glad to walk away." I didn't walk in. I didn't say a word. I just stood there. I must have stood in that hallway for 5 minutes, shaking. Then I turned around and left. I went home, locked the door, and cried harder than I've ever cried in my life. Then I opened my laptop. I wasn't just sad. I was angry. The kind of angry that makes your whole body go cold. And I remembered something. The business wasn't in just his name. In fact, most of it wasn't in his name at all. Months before, I talked to our accountant about strange charges. Uber rides, hotel rooms, weird Venmo transfers. He warned me to protect myself. So I started making changes, small, quiet ones. I added a clause to our lease that gave me full legal rights as the primary partner. I updated the LLC paperwork. I moved our main bank account to one under my full control. All legally. All documented. He didn't even notice. So that night, I went to work. I froze the cafe's business account. I changed all the passwords, banking, supplier access, payroll software, delivery services. Then I called a locksmith. I had him scheduled for 6 a.m. I also printed a sign. Big black letters. Closed due to lies. I was there before sunrise. I took down the open sign. I put up the new one. I changed the locks. I removed Brian's access from every tool, every system, every login. When he showed up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. He called my phone 15 times in a row before I picked up. "What the hell is going on?" he shouted. I said, "Now try starting over without me, because I already did." And then I hung up. He lost it. He screamed through the door. He tried to get in through the back alley. I called the police, not to report him, just to let them know he might try something. They knew me. One of the officers used to come in every Sunday. They promised to keep an eye out. Brian tried to spin it. He went on Facebook and posted some long rant about how I stole his dream. How I was a bitter, unstable woman who couldn't handle success. I responded with screenshots. Text messages he'd sent the other woman. Emails. Bank records. Receipts. The updated business license in my name. People saw the truth. Especially the regulars. One by one, they messaged me. They told me they stood with me. That they knew how hard I worked. That I was the cafe. Brian had just been the face. I was the bones. He tried to start a food truck. He called it Bean King. I know. Don't laugh. But the city held up his permits because of pending tax issues. Issues I warned him about a year earlier, which he ignored. He tried launching a GoFundMe to reclaim his dream. It got maybe $300 from two of his cousins. Then he disappeared. Meanwhile, I rebranded. I changed the name to The Second Cup. New colors, new menu, same space. People loved the story. They shared it. We went viral, nothing huge, but enough that people came from other towns to see what the buzz was about. But this wasn't over yet. Because Brian wasn't done. And neither was I. For a few months, things were quiet. Brian vanished from Tacoma. His old friends stopped asking about him. The cafe was doing better than ever. We were actually profitable, and I finally started paying myself a real wage. I hired 2 new baristas. One was a single mom who reminded me of myself, hungry and hardworking. I thought the storm had passed. Then one morning, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. Just a typed sentence. You think you won, but I made sure you'll go down with me. I sat at my kitchen table for 10 minutes, just staring at it. My stomach turned cold. I knew that voice. Even on paper, I knew it was Brian. I called my lawyer. That same afternoon, I found out he had reported me to the IRS. He claimed I had been laundering money through the business. Said I had hidden income. That I used business funds for personal gain and kicked him out illegally. It was all fake. But it didn't matter. Now I had to prove it. The investigation dragged on for weeks. The IRS froze one of the accounts temporarily while they reviewed our history. I had to send over years' worth of financial records, emails, receipts, everything. It didn't help that Brian had kept sloppy records. I spent hours each night combing through our old QuickBooks backups, labeling transactions, building a clean trail. It was humiliating. And it was expensive. I couldn't sleep. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. Every time someone walked into the cafe with a suit on, I flinched. Brian hadn't just tried to hurt my business. He wanted to ruin me. Then came the article. It was in a small local blog, one of those gossip sites that pretends to be news. The headline read, Local cafe owner accused of financial fraud by ex-boyfriend and former co-owner. It was all Brian's version of the story. He painted himself as a dreamer who'd been used by a controlling, jealous woman. Claimed I tricked him into signing over his business. That I retaliated after he tried to move on. It spread fast. People started whispering. Our regulars stood by me, but newer customers pulled away. A couple of vendors paused our accounts. I lost a catering contract with a community college. I was bleeding slowly. That's when I found out something else. The woman Brian had been cheating with? The one he called his real partner? She was pregnant. I got the news from a friend who worked at the courthouse. Brian had filed for custody before the baby was even born. And he listed Blue Pine Coffee as his employer. Said he owned 50% of it, and he planned to resume operations once things were settled. I felt sick. He wasn't done.
He was planning something.
Maybe to claim back part of the cafe, or use the baby to gain sympathy. Either way, he was clawing for a way back in, and I wasn't going to let him. So I made a choice. If he wanted to come for me through legal routes, then I'd play that game. But I'd play it smarter. I started digging deep. I hired a private investigator, a friend of my cousin who worked in Seattle. He didn't come cheap, but he was thorough. What he found made my jaw drop. Brian had applied for at least 3 business loans using my credit score. He tried to impersonate me on one of the forms. He even faked my signature on a supplier application. The investigator also tracked down 3 other women. One in Portland, one in Boise, one in Olympia. All of them had dated Brian in the past. All of them said he'd borrowed money, made promises about opening cafes or bakeries, and ghosted them once they paid up. He'd been doing this long before me. I wasn't the first, but I would be the last. I called a meeting with my lawyer. We started building a case, not just for fraud, but for identity theft. And I wasn't going to file it quietly. I was going to file it loudly. The truth needed to come out. And Brian? He had no idea what was coming next. A week after I filed the fraud complaint, things escalated fast. Brian was served the legal notice at his mother's place in Spokane. She tried to deny he was living there, but the process server spotted him through the kitchen window. He ran out the back door like a coward. But the notice was delivered, and that's all that mattered. I didn't expect what happened next. The Olympia woman, her name was Tessa, called me directly. She'd heard about my case through our investigator and wanted to talk. We met at a diner off I-5. She was nervous at first, tapping her spoon on her coffee cup, eyes darting to every door. Then she handed me a flash drive. I didn't know who to give this to, she said. He gave me a laptop before he left. Said it was too slow, and he didn't need it. I found files, emails, recordings. I took the drive home that night and plugged it in. What I saw made my skin crawl. There were dozens of voice memos Brian had saved. Recordings of phone calls with women, some of them clearly illegal, no consent, just him saving conversations. In one, he joked about how easy it was to get women to front the cash. She thinks she's a partner, he laughed in one of them. They all do. I just smile, nod, play house for a bit.
Boom Café funded.
Another one? It was me.
My voice.
A call from 2 years ago. I'd been crying, saying I wasn't sure if I could keep up with the loan payments anymore. He saved it and labeled it Leverage R. That's when I knew he wasn't just a liar. He was a predator. This wasn't about a failed relationship. This was a pattern. He targeted women, used them, drained them, then moved on to the next one like it was a strategy. He probably thought he was some kind of genius. So I decided to go further. I didn't just submit the recordings to my lawyer. I sent them to every vendor he'd tried to work with. Every one of them that he'd burned under Blue Pine Coffee's name. I let them hear him admit the whole thing. Then I went to the blog that ran the hit piece on me. I met the editor in person. Brought her a binder of documents. Bank records. The PI report. Quotes from other women. The flash drive. She looked stunned. Said she'd never run a retraction before, but she would this time. The next article? Exclusive. Tacoma man behind local cafe scam exposed by multiple women. They included screenshots, audio clips, quotes from other victims. It went viral in a day. The fallout was instant. Brian's GoFundMe was shut down. He tried to file a DMCA takedown on the blog post, but it was too late. Someone on Reddit picked up the story and ran with it. The comments shredded him. People started calling him Coffee Catfish. A few of the women he scammed started a private group chat. They began compiling stories, amounts loaned, texts, false promises. One of them, the woman from Portland, had given him $8,000 to invest in an eco-cafe. She never saw a dime. By now, the group had grown to 6 of us. One woman said she was only 22 when he met her. He told her he'd mentor her on how to run a business. He drained her savings. She tried to kill herself 2 years ago. That was the moment I stopped thinking of this as personal revenge. This was justice. But just as things started to look like they were turning in my favor, something new happened. Someone broke into the second cup. They didn't steal anything. No cash, no equipment missing. But the place was trashed. Sugar bags ripped open. Syrup bottles smashed. The espresso machine had bleach poured in it. A note left behind, written in all caps. "You ruined my life." Police said it looked like a personal attack. They asked if I suspected anyone.
I didn't hesitate.
Brian Weller. They looked at each other. One of the officers, the same one who'd come in for Sunday lattes, just nodded. But there was no hard proof. No cameras, nothing tying him directly. He hadn't used his name. But I knew. I filed a restraining order the next day. Still, the damage cost me nearly $14,000 to fix. Insurance helped a little, but not much. I almost closed. Almost. But I didn't. Because people started showing up. One woman brought her whole book club and tipped $200. A high school teacher ordered coffee for her entire faculty. They left notes that said, "We believe you." Brian tried one last move. He showed up at a community meeting for small business owners, uninvited, and tried to pitch a new vision for an entrepreneurial network. Someone filmed it. When they asked about the second cup, he said, "She stole what I built. But karma's coming." The room stayed silent. Then a man stood up, an old guy I barely remembered. He used to come into Blue Pine with his wife every Tuesday before she died. He said, "We all know who built it. And it wasn't you." Then he walked out. Everyone else followed. That's where things stand now. I'm rebuilding again. Stronger, with more eyes open. But Brian? I know him.
He's not done yet. And neither am I.
It took another 3 months before the court date came. I wore black that day. Not because I was mourning, but because it felt like the right color for burying lies. The courtroom was small. Brian sat across from me, 2 rows over. He had shaved, wore a blazer too tight for his frame, and tried to look calm. But his hands shook. He didn't make eye contact. His lawyer was some third-rate guy from Spokane who clearly didn't read the file. Mine came in with a full binder, tabs, color-coded, and with receipts printed on thick paper. We didn't come to play. The case was clear: identity theft, fraudulent loan applications, harassment, and destruction of property, though the last one was still pending investigation. We weren't there to debate the relationship. We were there to show what he did on paper. But the judge, an older woman named Wallace, asked sharp questions. She didn't care about charm or sob stories. Brian tried to twist the story, saying I locked him out illegally, that the cafe was his vision. Then my lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit audio recordings, screenshots, and witness testimony that clearly show Mr. Weller manipulated multiple women into funding business ventures under false pretenses, including impersonating Ms. Reardon on financial documents." Judge Wallace raised her eyebrows. "Audio recordings?" "Yes," he said, and played one. It was the one where Brian said, "She thinks she's a partner." They all do. I smile, nod, playhouse.
Boom Café fündet.
Silence. Then the one labeled leverage. R, with me crying about the loan. The judge turned to Brian. Her voice was sharp. "Is this your voice, Mr. Weller?" He didn't answer. She leaned forward. "You can answer now, or I can hold you in contempt." He finally whispered, yes. In the end, she ruled in my favor. Brian was found liable for identity theft, fraud, and defamation. He was ordered to pay restitution, not just to me, but to 3 other women who had joined the civil case. He didn't have the money, but the judge approved a wage garnishment order. Brian had recently gotten a warehouse job in Spokane. Now, 65% of every paycheck goes to the people he conned. For the next decade, he'll be working to pay us back. And if he misses one payment, it goes back to court and the charges go federal. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks after the ruling, I got a message from someone on Reddit. A woman from Utah. She said she dated a man named Brian Weller in 2014. He vanished one night, left her with $4,000 in bills. She found the article. She cried reading it. I connected her with my lawyer. More women kept reaching out. Eventually, a journalist from Oregonian picked it up. Then Seattle Times. A month later, Brian's face was on the front page of a local newspaper with the headline, "Smooth-Talking Dreamer or Serial Fraud." The women who funded Brian Weller's coffee lies, his mother gave an interview. She cried on camera, said she never knew the extent. I don't believe her, but that's not my battle anymore. Brian tried to disappear again. Deleted social media.
Quit his job.
Left his apartment. Then came the final twist. One of the women, Tessa, called me in tears. She said Brian showed up at her door drunk, begging her to just talk. Her boyfriend called the cops. Brian was arrested for violating his no-contact order and drunk driving. He blew a 0.21 and had a suspended license. He's in county jail now. And his bail?
Denied.
Flight risk. As for me, I kept rebuilding. The second cup is busier than ever. People travel to see it. Not because it's trendy or sleek, but because it stands for something.
Truth. Work.
Survival. I put up a framed article near the counter, one of the first ones where I told my story. A quote from me is highlighted. He thought I was the stepping stone. Turns out, I was the whole foundation. We donate 10% of profits to a local women's support fund now. It's named after all the women who came forward. I see them sometimes. They stop in, sip coffee, smile. We don't always speak. We just nod. We know. We survived him. And me? I've changed. Not bitter. Just clear. I was part of it too. I ignored red flags. I let love blind me. I co-signed things I shouldn't have. I lied to myself. So, I own that. But I also owned everything else. The business. The comeback. The final word. As for Brian, he can sip state-issued instant coffee now. From behind bars. Let him try starting over without me. Let him learn what it's like to be the stepping stone for once.